So this is about Nigel Farage, who is, well, he's an amateur broadcaster in his new life, but he is also a well-known politician. Now, he claimed that documents have proved that Coutts Bank have closed his account due to his views on Brexit, Donald Trump and gender ideology. The bank, whose clients include members of the royal family and myself, initially denied that was the case and briefed that perhaps Farage didn't have enough money. You've got to have a certain amount of money to have a Coutts account. But according to the former Brexit Party leader, 10 other banks have refused his custom. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has condemned it today, stating that no one should be barred from using basic services for their political views, adding that free speech is a cornerstone to our democracy. So, Grace, an interesting case. When you get into the weeds of the documents, which were published by The Telegraph today, the reasons apparently are twofold. One is that Nigel said, I want to make you aware of a commercial exit decision being made about Nigel Farage. The relationship has been below commercial criteria for some time, and upon review of Nigel's past public profile and connections, the perceived risk for the future weighed against the benefit of retention. The decision was taken to exit upon repayment of an existing mortgage. Now, it turned out that existing mortgage apparently was paid off, hence their decision to say we're no longer going to allow him to stay as a client. So in making the decision, risk factors included accusations of links to Russia, controversial public statements which were left to conflict with the bank's purpose, and the possibility, speculated in the press and not denied, of re-entry to politics taken into account. There is, however, also clearly a risk of negative publicity in exiting, which was accepted. So that's the broad brushstrokes here, where partly they've used the excuse he no longer has the amount of money you need to have a Coutts account. I can attest that you have to have a certain amount. So that may be partly true. But clearly, another motivating factor were his political views, to which I would say I don't agree with a lot of what Nigel Farage says politically, but I don't understand why he shouldn't be allowed an account at Coutts if I am.
Well,
I have strong opinions about lots of things.
Mr. Farage believes in a free market. And businesses within a free market have the right to make decisions about services and goods that they will or will not supply. But is that right for a bank? Based on supply and demand.
But should a major bank be using someone's political views? I mean, look, they cite his relationship with Donald Trump. I had a relationship with Donald Trump for a long time.
The market doesn't care about your feelings. The market doesn't care about anything. It is just risk and reward. It's supply and demand. And if you believe in a world that is governed by the logic of the market, you have absolutely no leg to stand on.
I thought you believed in free speech. Hang on, you believed in free speech.
I believe in free speech, of course, but the market doesn't guarantee free speech.
Until Nigel Farage says
the market doesn't guarantee free speech.
You should condemn it.
You know who has to? The public sector. We have to all collectively agree free speech. And if it was up to me, I believe we should have a public banking system in which everyone is guaranteed.
Different issue.
No, it's not. It is a very real issue.
Just to clarify, you think Coutts should have the right to do this? Fine.
I don't believe that because I don't believe in a free market society, but Nigel Farage does.
But do you believe that Nigel Farage should be disallowed or have his account discontinued because of his political views? Given your adherence to free speech, you've just been banging on about it.
I think that we should have a public banking system in which everyone is...
That wasn't my question.
De facto
my question. Should he be allowed to have an account at Coutts because of his political views?
We live in a capitalist economy. If a private bank says, because of perceived political risk, we aren't going to give an account to someone, then ultimately, either you say we live in a free market society, they have the right to do that, or you say we shouldn't live in a free market society, and he shouldn't have the right to do that.
Not free speech. OK, got it.
No. I completely agree with free speech. But the market doesn't guarantee free speech.
Understood. Douglas, before you speak, I want to play a clip of Nigel Farage talking about this and then come to you.
Commentary and behaviours that do not align with the bank's purpose and values have been demonstrated. So the bank has a series of values. The bank has a series of political positions. And as for purpose, well, I thought the purpose of companies was to act ethically, yes, of course, but to return to their shareholders dividends. And in this case, folks, do you know who the shareholders are? It's you and me.
All right, Douglas, your view of this.
Well, first of all, it's always delicious when a socialist sets up a binary in the way that Grace just did. If there's something bad in capitalism, the only alternative is socialism. Of course it is. It always is for socialists, isn't it? But it is lovely hearing Grace
She's even grinning
defending.
At that. You've even got a grinning in self-awareness.
I'm deliberately not interrupting.
Grinning in self-awareness. Go on, Douglas.
And it's lovely hearing Grace defend Coutts Bank. It's a terrific position for a socialist to be in. Look, I would put it this way:
I don't believe Coutts Bank should exist,
the most important thing in this is the old shoe on the other foot scenario, isn't it, Piers? Here's a good example. I mean, Grace was a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn led a very racist period in the Labour Party's history, where female Jewish MPs were hounded out of the party, and the Equality and Human Rights Commission found that the Labour Party had a serious problem with racism. Now, here's the thing. I don't agree with anything that Jeremy Corbyn believes, probably no more than I agree with anything that Grace believes. But if Coutts Bank, I don't know if Mr Corbyn would bank with Coutts, but whoever he banked with, if they said that because of Mr Corbyn's association with racists and racism and terrorists and so on, he shouldn't be allowed to have a bank in the UK, I would defend him to the hilt. Because I know where this goes. The Canadian government, ultra-dippy Trudeau in Canada, has presided over a system in the last 18 months in which if you're an opponent of his government and actually come out and protest, as people did last year, you can get debanked. Just think about that again for a moment. We were talking about protests earlier, that if you protest against the government, you can lose the right to bank in a cashless economy. So here's the thing.
Wrong.
We know where this leads. We know where this leads. And I would suggest that anyone who believes in freedom, including freedom of the press, freedom of speech, and much more, should care deeply when their political foes, even when their political foes are the people, even when their political foes who they would love to kick in the nuts, get it, they should defend those people's rights.
How might we deliver an economy in which everyone has the right to a bank account? As a basic human right, you have the right to a bank account. There's no way you can get unbanked.
Yeah, OK, but look.
It's very easy.
Grace, that
is a debate for another day.
It's really not.
Here's what I would say about it.
Pertinent.
Nigel Farage went out of his way to try and wreck my opening night interview with Donald Trump for this show over a year ago. He literally went to Trump with all the worst things I said about Trump in the previous year and said, look at this, you can't do the interview. And Trump nearly pulled the plug. So I have absolutely zero reason to say anything supportive of Nigel Farage. And he works for a rival network as an amateur broadcaster. Again, that's another reason not to say anything nice about him. However, I've got to say, as a Coutts customer myself, I find this very concerning. And I rang them today to ask. I rang them to ask to speak to them today, but they said they couldn't talk about it because by doing so they would be providing information about a client. I presume they mean Nigel Farage. But here's my point about it. I have what some people consider controversial views. I don't think they're controversial, but I have quite strong views about other things. I'm not quite sure why his are deemed less acceptable in terms of being a banking customer in the UK
well, do you know why?
than mine. I may not agree with him about a number of things. I'm just not sure why I tick boxes and he doesn't when it comes to a right to have an opinion in what I thought was a free democracy.
It's because the bank
It could be you tomorrow, Piers. It could be Grace the day after, me the day after that.
The bank has deemed, based on an assessment of risk, which it has very professional people to do, it said it is going to potentially, over the long run, damage our profits if we offer this person a bank account. This is a decision that banks make every day. Not to offer bank accounts to low-income customers,
I have to say
close branches. And it's wrong.
Having read the full details that appeared in the Telegraph today, I don't think there are grounds that suit that.
Also,
I don't think there is any damage to
But ultimately, the bank is able to do it because it's a private bank. Let's have public banking.
Don't forget that Coutts lied and briefed a lie to the BBC, which the BBC then reported. They're not interested in the truth at Coutts. I'd get your money out, Piers.
Well, we'll see. I'm going to hope to speak to them and get some answers to some questions. I'm genuinely interested and concerned about how far they take this. How far, my opinion, is going to be one day ruled offside.
Why don't we nationalise Coutts?
Right, you know what, Grace, we'll come back and talk to you about
full-blown socialism.
I'm glad we're all on the same page.
We're going to leave it there. Douglas, as always, thank you over in New York. Grace, great to see you twice running. I am spoiled. Thank you for being back today.